get us back into the presentation and we'll get started. Now, so thanks for your patience. Welcome along. We are recording today's session. I'll chop off the start. I'll start us from now and I'll tidy it up at the end and I'll pop it online and send you all a link so you can access the tool or this webinar later. We've got a few registered and a few not in. So obviously the school week is catching up on people, but we will get them all a copy too. So if you know any colleagues who are coming, they won't miss out. Let's get stuck in because it's surprising how quickly the 1 hour can go through. Let me just bring my clock up so I'm on time. And there we go. So firstly, a quick, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm Mick. I'll talk about myself in a second, but you should have on your little bar below in Zoom, you should have a few tools to play with that you can communicate with me. We've opted for the Zoom webinar. This is the first time I've tried the webinar setting. So you might, if you're used to using Zoom, a Zoom meeting, there might be slight differences down there, but we have there's a Q&A or a chat section. And if you've got any questions, pop them into the chat window. And as David knows, and Ruth, you might pick that up too, along that bar somewhere. I've got a presenter's version, so I don't see your version, but there'll be a reaction section. And I think you can do a little wave or you can do a thumbs up. So I might ask you to give me a bit of feedback as we go. So also we're recording the session. So I'll record it today. And as it says there, if your webcam's on, chances are you'll be recorded and that will be picked up. So you can turn that webcam off now if you like. All right. I just want to start our session by, with an acknowledgement of country, acknowledging the traditional owners, past, present, and emerging on the lands on which we learn today. We're coming from all across Australia. I'm in the Turrbal and Jagera Nation, so I want to recognise those people. We also recognise we're learning on lands over which sovereignty was never ceded. My name's Mick. I'm a geography teacher. I work for Contour Education, or I am Contour Education. My role, I work with students and teachers who want to use digital and geospatial technologies in their classrooms. We have a plane going over now, so you'll probably hear that as well. And yeah, you can catch me on those contact sources. So email is usually the best, and you can get me on Twitter and Facebook as well if you like. Okay, so on this, actually, I need to give you a link because you can't click on that. So just bear with me. What I want to do is I want you to be able to follow along too. So I'll just grab the link from the session. And I'll pop that into the chat window. So let me have a look. Oh, someone's in the chat. No thumbs up, only hand up. Okay, so hang on, David. Let me. Oh, you only have the hand up reaction. Oh, that's interesting because the thumbs up one would be useful too. Now I've just put a big long link there into the chat bar, and you'll be able to click on that, and you can follow along with the presentation there. But let's look at our agenda. So in the next hour, we're going to look at a few things. So we're going to look at what is geospatial. We're going to look at where it fits in the curriculum. And then I've come up with rules because today's all about getting started. You know, how do I begin with my program? So I've come up with, I've synthesized all of my knowledge and experience down to these 4 rules. And I think if you follow these rules, it's a really good way to start with the tools. And then we'll wrap up for the day. Hopefully, no, definitely at 4:30. Sometimes I can get carried away and show you lots of stuff, but I've tried to keep it really tight today. So yeah, that's our agenda. And for each of those rules, we'll go through and I'll show you some examples, and we'll get a little bit hands-on in there, so you'll get a bit of time to play with some stuff. All right. But first, what is geospatial? I'm gonna go through this section really quickly because there's a really good reference tool I'll show you here, this story map, that link you can see. But what does geospatial mean? Well, geo relates to the Earth. We all know that. We're good geography teachers. Spatial is relating to, as you can see there, occupying or having the character of space. So it's about, geospatial is about the relationship between things and space, the space, that being the space around us as opposed to outer space in particular. This story map, which we'll have a quick look at now, and if you can just give me a wave to confirm you can see that, that would be very handy. Let me see, sorry, I need to click on that. Okay, David raised his hand, great, thank you, David. All right, let me just clear things up there. Put the chat down here. Okay, so this is a what is spatial story map. Now this is hosted, you can see there, the Queensland Spatial Information Council. Just so you know, I don't know how long this will be around. They have sort of declared their intention to remove a lot of their education stuff. The Queensland Spatial Information Council at the end of this year, so that may happen over summer. So everything I show you from QSET, and I'll show you one other tool from QSET a bit later, be aware that they might not be here for long. So you want to copy and download and so forth now. So what is spatial? Really quickly, you can come back and have a look at this. It's there for your reference. But we start off with these spatial concepts. So what is spatial? Conceptually, we've talked about what geospatial relates to. It relates to space, it relates to the Earth, and it relates to how the two interrelate, I guess. Spatial thinking or spatial literacy. It's a very broad kind of area. A lot of research has been done into how people acquire their spatial literacy and the skills they use and so forth. But what we're talking about there is we're talking about where things are in space. So you can see there, location, proximity, direction, distance, correlation. These are the kinds of concepts that we're dealing with when we're looking at spatial, that idea of spatial. So if we keep going down further, we can see that we have spatial technologies. So these are certain technologies that we can use, and certain technologies we can use to measure the Earth and features of the Earth, and also to represent those features. And when we talk about spatial technologies, we talk about three tools. It's sort of an umbrella term: spatial technologies or geospatial technologies. The two are interchangeable. We talk about three main tools, and they are here listed here. So GNSS, or Global Navigational Satellite Systems. We talk about remote sensing, and we talk about GIS. And I'm going to run you through each of those really quickly right now. Pardon me. There's a little video there you can check out if you like, a little introductory video. But GNSS, we'll start with this one because most people are familiar with it. And when I'm with an audience, I'll ask people, pop up your hand if you've used or if you know what GNSS is. And usually people don't put their hands up. But when I explain that GNSS is a type of, or I guess related to GPS, everyone knows what we're talking about then. And as it happens, GPS was the first GNSS. And as other countries, GPS is the American network. And what am I talking about, actually? Let's have a look at the image first. So GNSS is a network of satellites around the Earth. And your receiver, which is this thing these days, when you're in open space, it will connect up with 3 or 4 of those satellites, and it triangulates your location. And then you can do stuff with that. You can record it, you can overlay it with other stuff, you can jump in your car and see your current position overlaid on a map, and you can do a whole lot of stuff related to that. But when I put it that way, people go, oh yes, I know what GNSS is now. So GPS was the American network, and subsequently there have been more: European network, a Russian network, a Chinese network, Japan and India have put one up. And so collectively they're all known as GNSS. But we all just say GPS. So if I keep going here, there's the old school receiver, although nowadays it's, as I say, your mobile phone. And look, these tools are, we all use these tools in a bunch of ways. Again, with a live audience, I ask people, and when I say with a live audience and more than an hour, I stop and ask people how GPS impacts on their life. And we get everything from ordering a pizza on Domino's. You can follow the little person on their motorbike, driving in the car, getting public transport or navigating to a place. You've got the recreational stuff, which you can see on screen, and also things like, what is it? Pokemon Go. So you've got some games and recreational applications there as well. Geocaching, if anyone's done geocaching. Yeah, lots of ways these tools apply. Our next spatial technology is remote sensing, remotely sensed data. And with remote sensing, we can literally, you can see there, gathering information about a planetary body without being in contact with that planetary body. And so we've got satellite images, and you'll see a satellite image here of Splendor in the Grass. We've got drones, we've got aerial photography as well. So there's going to be a few different ways we can gather that data. There's Splendor in the Grass getting busy. Remember when we could all do things like that? And there's drones, and drones are becoming more and more popular and usable and affordable and accessible, and they can collect some really useful data too. And in fact, something like Splendor in the Grass might be better off, rather than getting satellite data, which you can see here, pardon me, it might be better off with a drone. And so, yeah, there's remote sensing. Our last geospatial technology is GIS, and GIS is an acronym. It means Geographic Information Systems. And if you've heard of an information system before, you'll know that it's a rudiment. Well, no, we shouldn't say rudimentary. I say a database is a rudimentary information system. So an information system is a database. A geographic information system is a geographic database. And that's the key with GIS, is that every row in that database links off to a part of the Earth. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So we can see here, I could give you a table of data, and I could tell you to describe for me, income distribution around your city or town or suburb or locality. And with a table, that might be kind of hard to do. But if we're able to put that data on a map, as you can see on screen, it's much easier to interpret. So that's what the value of a GIS. And as well as that, we can start putting multiple layers together and looking for correlations and so forth. Yeah, so I'll let you, that's pretty much it. There's a little GIF there, or GIF, of other ways that you can look at data. There's crime data in Brisbane. There's the casino and the police station, the watch house. There's some census data again for Brisbane that's in 3D, and we've got a whole lot of other stuff you can check out. There's a few links further down too if you're interested in going further. There's some stuff on careers in there you can follow up with on Destination Spatial. Okay, so any questions at this point? I'll just close that one down. Are there any questions about that kind of overview? Just look in my chat window. No one's there. I'm just going to very quickly check my email just to see if anyone has screaming. How do we get in? Oh, so I'll just do a really quick email check, and then we'll move on and start getting hands-on. Double check. No questions in the chat there. No. Okay. And no emails have come in. That's good. No one's panicking. All right. So let me just bring you back to the slideshow. Okay, so there's our kind of overview. Really quickly, I just want to conceptualize spatial technologies or geospatial technologies, whichever term you prefer. I kind of look at them like this. I use this analogy here, the pyramid. So we've got three main, I break spatial tools for educators into three main categories. There's the first one is online geospatial tools. You can see number one, the base of our pyramid. Number two is interactive spatial tools. Number three is industry standard spatial tools. The bulk of our stuff today, in fact, all of it will be in this online spatial tools section. We're not going to go beyond that today. These tools are online, so they're very accessible. They're usually free, and I personally don't promote them to teachers unless they are free. They have a limited tool set, but they're easy to use. So rather than giving you 1,000 tools to play with, you've got one website that is an interactive map showing you bushfires, and that's it. So they're, you can see they're specialized to one topic area usually. So they're focused and limited in scope, but very useful for you. Interactive tools, they allow you to start manipulating the data a bit. So you can bring in your own data. You might be able to do stuff with it, analyze it. You might be able to graph it, turn it into a map, change symbols on your map according to data. There's a whole lot of stuff you can do with interactive tools. These are tools like Google My Maps, if you've seen it, or Scribble Maps. I'll show you Scribble Maps today. It's an interactive tool. It's a really simple one. But these tools start allowing you to manipulate and create your own data. And then finally, you get the industry standard tools. Now, the interactive spatial tools, they tend to be kind of small and self-contained and usually easy to use. They're not the full-blown industry level. They don't have 100 tools, but they've still got a bit more grunt than, say, the online stuff. The industry standard tools, number 3, these are tools that, as the title would suggest, are used across industry. So these are tools like ArcGIS Online or ArcMap, QGIS, which is a fantastic open source GIS package, MapInfo, a bit of a blast from the past, and there's a few others, but really in education, they're the big ones, ArcGIS and QGIS. Yeah, so today we'll be entirely in number 1. We actually will touch one resource in number 2. Spatial data, I can see there are pulled. I just want to give you this section more as a reference. I'm about to rip through it now because I am a little bit behind time, but you can see there's a link to the original there where I've got the, where I've sourced a lot of this info put together by Dion Fleming. So I just want to acknowledge that. But he's done a really great slide with some presentation with some good examples. So you can see this is Western Australia, so geographic data, and enables us to model reality. You can see mining tenancies and roads and so forth in WA. Each feature of spatial data is part of a data set, and these all add up together to form maps. And you can see those layers showing us individual elements of the real world. There's a couple of types of data, broad categories. There's vector data and there's raster data. Vector data is your points, your lines, and your shapes or your polygons. Your raster data is your aerial images. So a raster data set, you can see if we zoom in, it's made up of pixels, and each pixel has a number, and that number gives you a color. So when you're looking at a gorgeous, high definition satellite image of somewhere, you're actually looking at a table of information with lots and lots of numbers in it. So that's how the two data types kind of compare, and we're not going to go into it now, but they each have their own individual uses. Imagery versus your vector data. The key with GIS, or the key with the geospatial, is that each layer of data links to its own table. And that table contains information. So you can see here, I'll just zoom in a bit. This is some Indigenous population data from WA. And you can see each row, I don't know how well you can pick up, you should be able to do the reading there, or read the text there, but each row links to a different place, and you can see there it's got its common name, it's got some secondary and other names, and then it's been categorized. You can see its occupancy status, either permanent or seasonal, the corporation that oversees it, and you can see there's a lot more data after that, population estimates, etc., etc. And so by building up these tables of information that are linked to the world, we're creating a geospatial data set, and then we can represent that data on a map. Yeah, so there's some data formats. We won't worry about that. And just this is my slide now. So back to my presentation. This is kind of in a nutshell. So you can see here each row. I should have started number 1. Each row links to a different location. These are suburbs in Adelaide or in South Australia. You can see each row has a different suburb, and then each column contains a separate piece of data. So we've got the name of the suburb, the state, the number, the population count, income level. That'll be ABS data, so median weekly income, and children per household, all in separate columns. And once you set your data out like that, you can display it, you can analyze it, you can query it, you can do a lot of stuff. But that's for another session. All right, so where does this fit into the curriculum? I'm going to, again, keep moving here because I want to give you more hands-on stuff than this, but links to the Australian curriculum predominantly in geography. Geospatial actually starts really early in primary school, where students are recommended to use satellite images, use thematic maps, use maps in their elaborations. And that starts in year one, which is astounding. It used to be actually mandated from year 4, but they've reviewed the primary curriculum and beefed up HASS a bit. And so that direct mention was taken out, but elaborations start in year 1. In science, there's some connection. There's a couple of mentions. There's a couple of broad mentions as well as a couple of specific ones, but really geography is the subject area that has taken up geospatial. Geospatial is mentioned in maths, so I do want to point this one out. So you can go and read your maths colleagues about it, but it's mentioned as a career option. So surveying is mentioned in geospatial as well. In the curriculum documents, particularly in geo, geospatial tech is most definitely positioned as a tool that supports inquiry. And that's where it's predominantly kind of embedded. You will see some content descriptions covered, but predominantly it's about inquiry and using the tool to support inquiry. So you can see, just as a quick example, this is the year 7 a unit overview from the Australian curriculum. So the water in the world unit, as well as place and livability. In the geographical inquiry and skills sections, we can see that there are in a couple of ways they use it. So collecting, recording, evaluating, as well as interpreting, analyzing, and concluding. These are the big parts. And you can see there, spatial technologies are directly mentioned. So represent data in a range of forms, with and without the use of digital and spatial technologies. Represent spatial distribution using spatial technologies as appropriate. And there in the analyzing subheading, again, spatial tech is identified as a tool that can help students analyze, interpret their information. So, and you'll find that all through geography from year 7 onwards, spatial tech is embedded to that degree. And that's Australian curriculum. So that'll be different again in each state. All right, how are we for time? Let me just check. 3:57. Okay, I'm a little bit behind, but I'll go as quick as I can. So I've got 4 golden rules for starting. The objective with this session is for you to walk away with the confidence to get going. Rule number 1, start small. I think a lot of people think that their first steps into geospatial needs to be a project-based learning task where we're working with, a local university, and we're going to go and collect all this data and design a problem. We'll go and collect the data. We'll transform the data. We'll analyze it. We'll communicate our findings. We might even use geospatial to communicate our findings as well. You don't have to do that. You certainly can aim towards that, but there's a lot going on there and a lot of pressure points there where things can go wrong. You could simply open Google Maps, Google Earth. You could look at an area like a catchment, a landmark, a populated place. You might be studying livability. So let's go and look at our suburb and see what's out there. We're going on a field trip to the Fortitude Valley in Brisbane next week to, evaluate sustainability or livability in the area. Let's go and check out where we're going and have a look at, the main land use. We'll look at traffic. We'll look at some of those things. So start small. Google Maps is a great tool to do that. Feel free to come along. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take 5-ish minutes and I'm going to show you what you can do with Google Maps without even signing in. So you don't need to sign in to access all the stuff I'm about to show you. You can do it from the base Google Maps, login. So I'm going to Google Maps, and feel free to follow along. And I'm going to show you, hopefully I won't forget any of these. Yeah, I think we're all pretty good. Directions is a straightforward one. I'm presuming you guys have all used Google Maps for directions before, so that's easy. But Google has some other really cool features. Let me get them in order for you. Traffic, topography, satellite. Okay, so traffic's number 1. Let's go. We're going to talk about traffic. There is only one place in Australia we should be doing that, and that's Sydney. So you can see I've zoomed into roughly the greater Sydney area here. Up here in my menu, you've got a few ways to access this data here, but I'll just go into the menu because it's kind of the easiest. So if we go to traffic, there's a traffic layer there, you can see. When we bring that up, that'll bring up very live traffic data. It's probably a few minutes old, that traffic data. And it's data that's collected from the Hive, you know, as people travel with Google Maps on their phones or devices. Google's always pinging that data back, and it lumps it all in together and creates this traffic layer. And you can see Sydney's looking, you know, it's not looking too bad for an afternoon. Bankstown's not looking great, but that's your live data. You can also, on there, you can also just change that to typical traffic, and it will give you, say, you know, let's look at Friday afternoon at about 4 o'clock in Sydney. Okay, shocking, don't get in a car. So you can kind of do a very rough traffic survey just by looking at that typical traffic data that's in Google Maps. I've already forgot my second one, topography. Yes, okay, so I'll show you satellite first. So along the top here, Google has a few map types in Maps. You can use Google Map, which we see by default, Google Satellite, and Google Terrain. If we go to satellite, we'll stay with Sydney. There we go. We get a satellite image, and straight away we can start to interpret that image and see a lot of information there. There is a function in Google Maps. If you want to get rid of all the layers and just see the pure satellite image, you can go to, once you've selected satellites, you can go up here into your menu and turn the labels off. You see, you get that pure satellite image. But I don't know where I am here in Sydney, but already I can see do some interpretation here. I can see some residential, I can see some recreational land use. I can see what looks to be industrial, possibly light industrial down here. I'm not sure what this is. This is fascinating here, but yeah, that's incredible. But yeah, already we can, just by looking at our satellite image, we can do some really basic interpretation of what's going on. I'm still none the wiser as to what this is, though. It looks like maybe a development site about to be built on. So Google Maps, the satellite view, you can do some really basic analysis and interpretation of information. Satellite topography, yes. So up here again in our menu, we've got this satellite, but we've also got a terrain option. So if I click on terrain, we're probably not going to see too much here because it looks pretty flat. But if I zoom out a little bit, we'll go into the Blue Mountains and see what we get. Where am I? Here we go. All right, actually, let's go up to Ku-ring-gai. It's lovely up here. So I'll just pull up a little spot here. And what I really like about this terrain view in Google Maps, let me just check my chat. No one's asked any questions, no. My terrain view is that when you zoom into a certain range, you won't see it when you're too far out, and it also disappears when you zoom in too far. But you can see here you get contour lines. And depending on where you are, it's a 20 or 40 meter interval. So, well, that's going to be sea level, isn't it? So 40, 80, 120, 160, 200. So we're 40 meters here, but I know other parts of Australia are 20 meters. So that's useful if you're kind of scoping an area and you're getting an understanding of topography. I'll just show you the same area without the hill shading and without the contour lines on it. So if we go back to the plane map, that's what you get in the plane map. So they actually have put a little bit of shading in the green there, but it's not really until you turn the terrain view on, you really can see that topography. All right, we've talked about satellite 3D. Oh yes, this is a really cool feature with Google. Back to our satellite image. Now, not a lot of people know this. We might go to the CBD because it'll look a bit better. So if we zoom into the CBD here, and I'm holding on my, I don't know if you can see my screen, my video, but I'm holding I'm holding the shift key and I'm holding my left mouse button as well. So I'm going to hold them both at the same time, shift and left mouse button. And if I move my mouse up, you'll see that the map will rotate, it will tilt up and down. And if I go left and right, it will rotate. So we can come down here to, oh, wrong way, the Opera House, and you can see if we tilt that in the right angle, we're going to get a nice 3D perspective of that place. So might be useful in urban studies, but certainly if you're looking at landforms, I won't do it now just because of time, but you could go to a mountain, you could go to a saddle spur or whatever landform you're looking at, look at it top down and then bring the 3D effect, bring the 3D kind of view into it, and you'll be able to see that landform from a different perspective. So I really like that feature of Google Maps. Public transport, cycling, and directions, and then historic street view. Okay, so public transport, I'm going to be quick here. So transport and cycling, you'll see, are both in that section under traffic. So you can grab all of that data together and check it out. I'm not going to do it now, but you can grab all that data and check it out. The other one worth looking at, though, is the Street View tool. So if I go, it's a bit dangerous here because I'm in a place I don't know too well, but there has been a bit of development in Sydney recently. So let's see if I can pick it up. So I'm going to drag my little Street View guy out here. I'm going to pop him there and cross my fingers. I hope this works. Okay, so I'm looking back towards Barangaroo. Yeah. So you can see there back towards Barangaroo. Now that's someone's photograph. I want the Google Street View. So just bear with me here while I find that. Oh, I've gone away. Okay. So you can see there, this is the Street View car. So we might even see the shadow of it. Sometimes you can see the shadow. No, the sun's at the wrong angle, I think. It's going to be down there. No, it's too high. But what you can do is, this is the Google van. It's got the disco ball on top, and it takes all the photos and stitches them together to create the Street View, and you can move around and view that. But what they've done now in Google is they've added this little option up in Street View in the top left corner. So hopefully you can see my mouse. I've got a little pointer here. I've got to figure out where that is. Oh, it was somewhere. But yeah, up here in the top left corner, you've got this Street View drop down, and here you can go back and actually pull up old Street View images that they have found. So let's go back and look at November 2007. And you can see that little aspect of the CBD looked quite different back then. We can zoom in a touch. There you can see still all the old remnants of wharves. I don't think they were being used then, but they were still there. If we fast forward to 2018, you can see how that place has changed and transformed. So yeah, you can look at change over time in your study area, and this is 2014. You can look at change over time, and you can kind of we're getting a record of that now over time, which is fantastic. All right. So yeah, there's our historic Street View in Google Maps. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. Play. So rule one is, start small. Don't feel like you've got to do a massive task. Have a play with use the tools that are simple and easy. Rule two is to play. So whenever you can, play with a bunch of tools. I'm going to talk about this resource QSET. I've got a link to that later, but there's lots of, this is a resource that's linked back to the Australian curriculum, and it has hundreds of different geospatial tools you can play with. So go in and have a play. Just pull out 5 or 6 interactive tools and just have a play with them. You've got nothing to lose. You can't break them. Worst case, you close the tab or you close your browser and you reopen it and start again. So yeah, the online GIS tools are kind of foolproof in that way. Also, just a useful tip is, if you're doing an internet search to look for resources, add the term interactive map to the end of it. So with earthquakes, with bushfires, with demographics, census data, if you add interactive map to the end of your search, you'll find interactive maps that have been created around that theme. Some of them might be hopeless, but you might find something really useful. So online geospatial tools are where to start. These are the tools to be playing with. Now there's a bunch here. We are not going to get to all of them, sadly, but you can go back and have a play with a few of them. I'm going to show you a couple really quickly. Let's have a quick look at Earth Null School. If you've been in one of my sessions before, you'll have seen this. I love this tool so much. You can see it's a 3D map of the world. There's my globe spinning around. I can zoom in to different parts of the world, and you can see, as by default, we get this wind. You can see it's wind movement and intensity. But if I click on the word Earth, I get more data. Now, when you click on the word Earth, you actually get a bit of a headache at first because there's a lot going on there. But if you look at this mode section, This is where you can bring up different kind of broad categories of data. You can see air, ocean, chemicals, particulates. And then when you pick a mode, underneath that, you'll get more specific data. So with my air data, I'm currently looking at wind, but I could look at temperature. So it's air temperature now coming up on screen. If you're doing landforms and landscapes and you're looking at the Himalayas, you might want to bring up this layer to show how the air temperature changes because of that geographic feature. Here's sea level pressure, MSLP. Again, if we've got a cyclone event happening, which I think there's one about to now in kind of around that China Sea area, you can see that sea level pressure has dropped significantly in that cyclone or that low pressure system. Also, just so you know, this legend here, or this menu box, to actually figure out what TPW or TCW mean, or even to figure out the scale, because you're all good geography teachers are probably going, Mick, I can see colors, but I can't see numbers. I don't know what these mean. If you actually just pop your mouse on the scale and let it sit there for a sec, you'll get this little drop down. It's a little bit hard to see on my screen, but there's a little tooltip, they call it, that pops down. And same with the acronyms. So MSLP means sea level pressure, TCW, total cloud water, and so on. So there's the air data. If I go to the oceans now, you'll see we get wave heights by default. You can see they increase around our cyclone. You can also get things like sea surface temperature. I'll just go to Australia because we have a bit of variety there. Wave heights, ocean currents as well. You can get animations of the ocean currents underneath. So hang on, there we go. So you can all go do your Finding Nemo thing and figure out how he gets from Sydney back to where he needs to go. Yeah, and then there's chemicals. There's chemicals being human-made, particulates being natural pollutants. And yeah, there's a whole lot of uses. When you go to chemicals, you always see Northeast China has got quite a lot of carbon monoxide. So that's can be linked back to development, interconnections. So yeah, lots of applications there. So there's Earth Null School. That's one. I'll get rid of that one. Google Time Lapse is another I want to show you. I'm looking at my clock now. I've got to go faster. Google Earth Time Lapse. Again, here we're looking at having a play with these tools. This is a rule we're checking out play. Google Earth Time Lapse is a great one to have a play with because you can go anywhere on Earth and you've got a single annual aerial image from each year from, I think it starts in 1984. Yeah, starts in 1984 and I'll just slow it down a bit, and it goes through to, I think, 2017 or 18. So you can see how the Earth has changed across that 30-year period. And here we're looking at glaciers disappearing. What Google have done on the left here is they've given you some examples. So mining, the Aral Sea is always quite dramatic. Dubai, actually, let's go to Dubai. We'll check out Dubai first, and then I'll let you play on your own. But there's some good stuff there on deforestation. There's some bushfire stuff. I know in Brisbane, for instance, we can see the years where bushfire events happened because you can spot them on the map. Here's Dubai. You'll see Dubai kind of grow up out of the desert. So yeah, you can imagine this tool allows you to see how we deforest the world, or how we develop the world, or how we drain our lakes and waterways and all sorts of other stuff. So really good one for looking at change over time. And to keep things going, okay, I'm going to do two more because I can't help myself. The Guardian have got this great census map, and they've put together data from the 2016 census. And you can see, if I just scroll down a bit, you can see there that you've got this kind of rudimentary key here. You've got the map of Australia, and then you've got all of your different data sets in this drop down. So I can let's pick median weekly rent, say, and we'll look at how that goes across Australia. So we can see certain patches in more rural and remote areas, and I'm sure when we discuss the mining industry, we could figure out why that's the case. I find a double click is an easy way to move around. I'll go to Sydney. We'll pick on Sydney here if we're looking at rent, and good idea to make students predict what the rent will look like before you zoom in, but you can see there, probably no surprises to anyone who knows Sydney. CBD area, very high. North Shore, northern suburbs is relatively high, although everything around the water is generally quite high. Gladsville might be an outlier there. And then, yeah, as we go west and as we go southwest, we see those rents drop off. So pretty kind of predictable stuff, but stacks and stacks of data, stacks and stacks of data, Indigenous population, people per bedroom, types of houses or types of household. Is it a townhouse, a house, or a flat? So yeah, lots of really cool data there. And another one to play with, I only got halfway through my list, but this one's really cool. I really like this site. I think an individual has put this together, and you can go and find a location. Let's just see where it starts. Okay, so it's picked a spot in Brisbane. I'll just pick a little tiny screen for some reason. Okay, that looks better. So here you can go to your area. I'll just do Brisbane. You can select an area. So you're going to click to start drawing, and you can see, I'll just go down to the river. You can kind of see an orange squares come up on my map there. It's turned blue when I click again. And now up here, I can click this button and it will take a few seconds. So it's building up a 3D. What it's doing is it's draping that aerial image on top of a 3D model. And so it's the image will sharpen up. My computer's heaving and huffing right now. But if I think it's shift. Yeah, if I hold shift, I can move around that 3D slice of the earth. So this would be great, if you're doing a catchment study, you want to look at a catchment area, you can have a quick look at that in something like this. So a really quick way to get a 3D model of the world. You can also print it if you want. So you can buy the file and get it 3D printed, and away you go. And you can also change elevation exaggeration if you want to do that. All right, so I'm going to stop there on the online tools, but they are a great set of tools for you to play with. There's a few more, as you can see, we didn't touch on. And then I'm going to point you to the QSET, the Queensland Spatial Educators Toolkit, and it has 200 plus of these tools for you to play with. So you'll have lots of opportunities to play with that stuff soon. All right, 1:15. Rule 3, low-hanging fruit. So, be strategic. Pick those areas of work where it's going to be easy to use. Most cases you'll be dealing with your colleagues, and so it's not about convincing you to use the tools, it's about convincing them. So a mistake might be to come in with that giant project-based learning task that's really hard and complicated and it puts everyone off. Be strategic, pick those areas of your units of work or your work program where there's a real obvious fit. We looked, say, at the Guardian census data. What's that, year 8? So go into your year 8 units. Year 8 might be one, year 10 might be one. You're certainly in senior, you'll be covering, demographics of places. You'll be covering that sort of stuff. So be strategic, use the simple tools first, entice people in, and then you can start to kind of build on what you've got. And start with units of work that need it. Include geospatial in classroom tasks before assessment. I think that's an obvious one, but certainly give yourself and your colleagues time to be comfortable with these tools before you use them in assessment. And then use them, look for easy opportunities. Like I say, if you're doing something on weather, you can go to the Bureau of Meteorology's MET-I, it's called MET-I, and you could use a tool like that in your weather unit. So be strategic. In regards to being strategic, let's have a look at this tool here. It's called Scribble Maps. It's a little online tool that lets you annotate the map yourself. So really simple. You can use it on iPads as well. So once you go there, click on this big orange button, create your map. And it should be, okay, so you can get the Pro version if you want, but you won't need that. Close that down, and on this little sidebar there's a gray button, just close that off too. So in here you can see, let's go to Australia, and I'm just gonna be, go the wrong way. Let's go into Adelaide. So in here you can do some really useful stuff. Actually, let's go to Port Augusta. I should actually have just searched, it would have been quicker, but I'm too invested now. So here we are at Port Augusta. You can see in the bottom right corner, I can choose a satellite view. I can choose a blank map. I can choose, there's one down here that gives me just, I think it's poster. Gives you just plain kind of black line map. So lots of different base maps for you to use. And you know, I can change those base maps again later and my content will be the same. But Scribble Maps, really versatile tool. You can use this in a lot of areas, basically where you need to annotate a map and you need to do it quickly. Scribble Maps is the go. So there's points, lines, and shapes. There's text, there's images. Well, this is a new one, 3D now. So I'll play with that one later. But here's your points. If I look at the marker tools, you can see there's all these folders of markers, and there's, you know, vehicle, there's road signs, there's news items, there's some weather stuff there, there's hazards there. So, you know, we might, you know, Port Augusta might be getting a cyclone and it might have hit there. So we can put that cyclone event, oops. We can also add information. So you can put a description in here, and I'm just going to put lots and lots of text. I can put a few more bits of text and even more. And as I add more text, it'll just add a scroll bar for me. You can also add links, YouTube videos, images, and audio files in there, SoundCloud files. So you can narrate for your students here. So you can customize that quite a lot, that little box. And then yeah, that's essentially it. So did I add my marker? Oh, I didn't save it, silly me. So I'll do that again just to show you. Cyclone, blah, 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 blah. And when you're ready, you can hit the save button and it will save that location. So there's a marker. You've also got a line tool. I can change that color. Let's make it hot pink, and we'll make it 8 item thick. So you can see that's just a freehand tool. You've got a straight line tool there if you want, but yeah, the freehand, if you're kind of tracing a creek or a road or whatever it might be, you can use that tool. You can zoom in as well and be more accurate than I'm being. The last item is a polygon or a shape tool. So I recommend using this one. It's the square that's had a bit of a chunk taken out of it. Pick your colors first. So we might be looking at, say, a land use map. So let's do a land use map, and we'll do residential land first. And it's literally just, you know, for each block of residential land, we're going to, oh, I hit my, I stopped sharing my Zoom button. Sorry. I've got too many toolbars and things on my screen. So let's try that again. Grab my polygon tool and start. And yeah, I'll just do this little section here. You can see if I wanted to, I could get really accurate and kind of trace around things, and then double click to finish. And that'll again allow me then to add, information to that. I can select it, I can adapt it, I can edit it, change it, I can add my videos, photos, and so forth. So Scribble Maps, really useful tool, very versatile, very accessible. I was in a class today with a group of students. They jumped on Scribble Maps on iPads and they created maps. It was a breeze. So low hanging fruit, go with Scribble Maps. All right, I'll check my time. 22, I'm not doing too bad. So the last question, or the last, rule I have is to plan. Obviously you want to be planning at some point. So, you know, get in first, have a play, pick out a few tools you like and you can see fitting into your work program, but you want to start being, you know, more structured in your approach, and a good plan is the way to do that. So I'd advise you to first have a look at your skills, and this doesn't need to be a formal process, but map your geospatial skills across your year levels. So ensure that if by senior, you want your students doing a certain thing. So if by senior, you want your students to be able to collect data using a GPS enabled device and, you know, geospatial data, and then transform that into a map and analyze that. Make sure that you've covered those things in earlier years. So in year 10, you might do the analysis section in a unit. You might really emphasize the analysis bit. In year 9, you might do the data collection. Year 8, you might do the, you know, creating a basic map, so that by senior, they can put all of that stuff together and, you know, go to that next level. I don't know why that M has decided to be a small font, but it has. Now, in order to help you with your planning, I've got a link to this resource. So it's called the QSET, the Queensland Spatial Educators Toolkit. Don't worry too much about the Q. I actually created this when I worked with the Queensland government. We aligned the resources, and I'll go to the page so you can see. So this is the page, and as I said to you before, oh yes, we have an election coming up, so the site is locked. This site though, the Spatial Educators Toolkit page, you can see up there is part of a spatial education site. This used to be my site when I worked for the department. They have informed me, or they informed me earlier this year, that it's probably only going to stay up for to the end of the year. So go to Spatial Education, check out, there's a whole lot of stuff in there. I'd recommend, if you're looking at field work, there's an article. If you want some resources, there's a section. The toolkit we're in now, and then there's a couple of other sections. But go and download and save and copy everything now, because it might go soon. Here's our QSET. You can see for geography, we've got prep to year 6, we've got year 7 to year 10, and then we've got senior. And then science, we've got prep to year 6 and 7 to 10, or lower secondary. Both of the primary resources and both of the lower secondary resources are linked to the Australian curriculum, or aligned with the Australian curriculum. The senior secondary geography is aligned to the Queensland syllabus, which of course is based off the national, the Australian curriculum. So that's a new Queensland syllabus that has come out. So there should be alignment across to other states as well. But yeah, let's have a quick look at one, just so you can see what they look like with our remaining few minutes. They're PDFs. I would have liked them to have been websites, but Queensland government thought a PDF would be better. There's a bit of an introduction and a bit of a blurb as to how to read the tool. You can see every unit in the curriculum has its own section. So if we go to interconnection, the way it's been laid out here is year 9, geographies of interconnection. We've kind of elaborated on the key inquiry questions that are in the curriculum. They kind of shortened them down when they did the review, but I fleshed them out a bit just to kind of give a general coverage to what an interconnection unit might look like. So how are we connected to people? How are we connected to different places? What are the effects of production and consumption on places? What are the effects of people's use of the world on places? And are there negative impacts? And then across there, so for each of those key questions, how are we connected to people around the globe? I've got a section here, how are we connected to people around the globe? And then underneath there, you've got learning experiences and teaching strategies. So these are ideas for you to use in the classroom, and then links to the resources you could actually use for them. So examine transport that connects us globally. And if we go to, I think it's this one, ships map, marine traffic, you can actually get a map showing you where ships have traveled over the course of a year, you know, where the global, that's a live view, but over on the side, there is an option, I think it's in here, density map, all traffic. Yeah. And if I get rid of that menu, there's a way to turn all the ships off too, but I won't have time to figure that right now. But yeah, you can see if I zoom out, that's the other thing I want to do. Go out a bit, you'll start to see there, if I go here to layers, I do need to turn those off because there's just far too many of them. Ships, how do I turn the ships off? No, it's not going to show me, but there is a way to do that. It's relatively simple. And underneath all those ships, you'll find really dark red and black color, because that's pretty much where most ships travel around the world. You can see those shipping routes quite clearly. And there's similar tools for airflow, although they're probably going to be a bit quiet over the next couple of years. But yeah, there's similar tools that show us interconnection that way. So that's the toolkit. Let me go back to the toolkit, and that's the toolkit is going to be your planning resource. It's a good starting point for your planning, anyway. And yeah, and all those links should be clickable as well. So it is a PDF, but it is somewhat digital. All right, now how did I go? Let's see. I was aiming to finish at 4:25, so there was questions. 4:29. I'm not too disappointed with that. How are you going? I've got. Let me see. I've got. Oh, I'll allow you both to talk. Sorry, I didn't. Okay, so I've given you talking permission. There's only 2 of us in this session now. Any questions? Is there anything I can clarify? I've been sort of yelling at you for an hour. Is there anything I've missed, or what do you think? What are your thoughts?
For me, at the end, I got a lot of useful tools out of it, but some of the earlier stuff I was pretty familiar with, but some of those tools are pretty good. I sort of, exploring this area and probably sort of keen to take it to the next level beyond this, but thought you want to get the foundations right and make sure you're starting from the same base. So I sort of started with this session.
Yeah, that's exactly what this session was, David. Yeah, give everyone a solid base, a starting point, and we'll, over the next 12 months of webinars, I'm planning to definitely build up and look at field work and a few other bits and pieces. So
yeah, okay, sounds good.
Yep. Yeah. And Ruth, any questions? Anything I didn't cover? Anything you'd like?
Yeah, well, I think it's just a question now of mapping out what, going and having a bit of a play with some of those things, and then mapping out where we could use it. I think I'd emailed you before about the Google Tour Builder. Oh, and yeah. We had done an activity that students had really involved as part of field work, that they presented their findings as a tour. So it's just, we invested quite a bit of time last year in that, only to find that Tour Builder is keeping up to date with those things and looking at how you can sort of integrate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, playing. I put play in as a rule because I found when I was starting that just having that kind of unstructured, loose time to make mistakes is really valuable. And with the online stuff, that's all pretty straightforward. But like just then with the ships tool, figure out how to turn that ships layer off. And I guarantee you, when you show the students that, one of them's going to say, "Sir or Miss, how do I turn that ships layer off?" And you'll know how to do it. That's the playing, to me, is really an important step. But yeah, so good. I'm glad I covered the basics for you. Definitely looking forward to stepping it up, going from that, going back to our pyramid, going back to the interactive, and then the more industry standard stuff. Okay, so very quickly, thank you for taking the time out. I will, if I've set my Zoom webinar up well, cross fingers, you'll get a little link to a survey at the end of this webinar. I'd really love to hear all of your feedback in there, or as much as you can give digitally. 3 questions, click, and you'll be done. I also want to take a moment just to, again, if you've got any questions or you want to hit me up, you've got those avenues you can do it. I'll wrap this up and stick it up on YouTube, and I'll send everyone a link. Yeah, and thank you again for taking the time, and go forth, have a play, and hopefully I'll see you in the next few webinars.
Thanks, Mick.
Thanks, David. Thank you, Ruth, and I'll see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you'll see me around that hour.
Yeah, great. All right, I'll let you go. Thanks, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.